Yeah, good to see you.
All right, so all you folks sitting in the back, okay, there are seats up here, and we're going to be talking about this painting right here, and I'm going to be talking about some detail in it. You will not be able to see it from back there. I'm not saying you have to move. I'm just letting you know you're going to be missing out on some stuff you've done. Don't just let it go with that. I'm going to read scripture to you this morning. I invite you to just hear these words. Jesus said, a certain man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, Father, give me my share of the inheritance. Then the father divided his estate between them. Soon afterward, the younger son gathered everything together and took a trip to a land far away. There he wasted his wealth through extravagant living. When he had used up his resources, a severe food shortage arose in that country, and he began to be in need. He hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. He longed to eat his fill from what the pigs ate, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hands have more than enough food, but I'm starving to death? I will get up and go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Take me on as one of your hired hands. So he got up and went to his father. It's the word of the Lord. How many of you recognize this painting? From room 113. You even had the wrong room. I thought one of that was a unity room. Okay, I'm new on the block, okay? I still got all those things down.
I actually studied that in college.
Did you? This is probably my favorite painting of all time. Rembrandt painted this in the 17th century. And it is his interpretation of the prodigal son and the whole story. We're going to spend the next 3 weeks in a sermon series titled Stepping In. This week we're going to be specifically looking at the prodigal son himself, but each week we're going to be looking at a different character in the painting. But I want to just share with you about the painting for a minute. I want you to everybody just look at this painting for just a second, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions. It's a unique painting. The original is 8 by 6. 8 feet by 6 feet. It's huge. So, anybody other than somebody that was in the first service, or Lori or Ann, how many people are in that painting? 5. See, the front row, see the 6th person. You folks in the back can't see it. There are 6 people in this painting. There's one that's just barely visible right up here in the corner. I think it's obvious when you look at it, which one's the prodigal son, right? This is the prodigal son. It's obvious which one's the father. This is the elder brother standing over here on the side, looking on. And then we have all the different individuals, 2 women and a man, whom we don't read about in the story in Scripture. But you know, just based on the way the story is told, that there were observers of this story that was taking place and unfolding. There's a couple of unique things in here. And again, I invite you up when the service is over. Come up and look at it. You'll have a few minutes before I have to run it down the hallway for the last service. But the son, he's disheveled. His clothes are ripped. They're just barely hanging on his body. He's missing a shoe. The other shoe has holes in it. But even in his returning home, there's some semblance of his place, his status. He still wears his sword on his side. So a sign of what was there that is no longer. things about this picture that I love, that it took me several years to realize it was there, are the hands of the Father. One hand is masculine, and the other hand is feminine. God is pulling the prodigal in and holding him. Now, I'm going to assume you all know we're invited to put ourselves in the story, right? Most of us probably, we lean towards the prodigal, we're returning back to our faith or journey that we've been on when we left and came back. And more times than not, when we think about the story, we think about the prodigal. But the thing is when we look at the story in Scripture, we really should be thinking about the whole of the story. There is a place, I know in my life, where I have been every character in this painting, from the observers to the elder son to the prodigal son, and the goal for all of us is to become the father in this story. Okay? So that's what Rembrandt's trying to depict for us, to help us understand on a deeper level what the prodigal son is all about and the story behind it. So what does the word prodigal mean? Okay, Lori, now you can spending foolishly? Okay, yeah. I wrote down spending money or resources freely and recklessly. Freely and recklessly. Wasteful extravagance would be another way to describe the prodigal. Wild abandonment, yes. And so we're going to ask ourselves at every step along this journey, who is the prodigal? Okay? Who is the prodigal? So just keep that in the back of your mind as we kind of decipher who this is. So the first, we're going to talk about the son this morning mostly, but first I'll talk about the observers of this situation that's taking place in front of him. I honestly believe most of us, most of the times in our lives, are actually those observers. I don't want to get involved. Many of you heard that say. Yeah, I've said it. Most of you probably have. We would rather be a fly on the wall and watch what's taking place rather than actually dive in and get involved. We have indifference to situations that are going on around us. Sometimes that we just kind of sit and we stare through what's taking place around us. And then there are other times when we actually observe what's going on, much like the elder brother does, but we choose not to engage. There's a curiosity about our humanity sometimes that says, I love that phrase, a fly on the wall. I've said that so many times in my lifetime. I would love to have been a fly on the wall at that meeting just to hear what was said. I don't know anything to do with it, but it was just been fun to hear, right? So I think more times than not in our faith journey, that we're actually the observers of what's taking place around us. Can you all relate to that? The son. I don't know about you all, but this is where I connected to this scripture when I first heard about it. A pastor friend of mine, I guess I would consider him my mentor, shared a book by Henry Newine with me that was written about this painting. And he had just preached a sermon series on it. And at that time in my journey, I was the prodigal. I had just come back to my faith. That's the way I felt. Like God didn't love me, that I had to prove myself to God, right? And I proved that I loved God before God would love me. That's how it felt. You know, there's better food in there for the slaves than there are for me out in the world, so I'm going to go kind of clean up what's on the ground and eat what I can and get my fill. We learn real quick in the story that's not God, right? God's filled with grace. So that song we sang in the beginning, Grace Wins. Love that song, Grace Wins. Because God's arms, these arms, they're always open, right? Always open. Even when we turn away from them, they're open. Yes, even when we're bad, they're always open. prodigal. Scripture, it says this. It says, the younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant land. You see, hidden inside the joy of homecoming is the immense sorrow of leaving. In order to understand the joy of the homecoming, we have to understand the sorrow of leaving. And we can't connect without it. Luke states this so simply that it's sometimes hard for us to grasp. It's simple words. He asked for his share of the money, and he left. But there's so much more depth to this. In this day, in this age, this was unheard of. You didn't go and ask for your inheritance early. You didn't ask for a loan against your inheritance. If I went and asked my father for my inheritance, in essence, I'm telling my father, I could care less about you. You might as well be, in fact, you are dead to me. You are dead to me. I hope none of us will say that to our fathers. But that's what this son is doing. He's not only turning his back on his faith, but he's turning his back on his family and his community and his traditions. And he said, to heck with all of them. There are better things in the world for me. And he runs off to the distant land. The world. Father, you're dead to me. You might as well not exist. See, we have to hear this story through our own experiences. So I invite you to put yourself into the story. Become the prodigal son this morning. Become the lost son. How many times have you left home in God for a promise of this world? How many times have you turned your heart from what you knew to be right to a promise in the world? We're not just looking for the defiant, rebellious act, but the subtle acts of life. We are not just referring to physically leaving home, but rather spiritually leaving home. We have all turned from what we know to be right and steered towards what is wrong. We have all succumbed to the pressures of this world. Everybody shake your head. Yes, Pastor, I get that. The parable of the prodigal son expresses the boundlessness of God's compassion. Of God's compassionate love. And in the painting and the story, the Father's touching of the Son is an everlasting blessing. Son resting against the Father's breast in eternal peace. Leaving home is our denial of the spiritual reality that we belong to God. The denial that we belong to God with every part of our being. The denial that God holds us safe in an eternal embrace. The denial that we have carved in the palm of God's hand and hidden in their shadows. Leaving home means ignoring the truth that God created our innermost being, that we were knit together in our mother's womb. Leaving home is living as though you do not yet have a home and must look far and wide to find it. Searching the distant countries. Home is the center of our being, the place where you can hear the voice say, "You are my son or daughter, whom I love." With you I am well pleased. It's the same voice that Adam heard. It's the same voice that Jesus hears. The same voice that speaks to us. The voice that gives life and love whenever it is heard. When we hear the voice, we can know that we have nothing to fear. That we are beloved of the Father. It is the voice that allows us to live in the midst of the darkness of this world while remaining in the light. Jesus had made it clear to us that the same voice he heard, we can also hear. The same voice that he heard on the River Jordan, the same voice that he heard on Mount Tabor. He has made it clear that we can hear that same voice. He prayed, "They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I have sent them into the world. For them I sanctify myself, that they too may be truly sanctified." His words reveal our true home in the Father. Yet, over and over again, we turn away from our Father. We walk out on what we know to be our only true home as a Christian. Seeking a home in this world, we run from the whisper in the wind. We run looking for affirmation from the world. We run looking for approval from the world. We run looking for acceptance from this world. From almost the beginning of our lives, we are pulled by the voices of this world. Go out and prove that you are worth something. That's the world we live in. That's the ugliness of the world we live in. That we have to prove something. God's voice does not come from the loud rumblings of this world, but rather the voice comes from the quiet whispers. Elijah did not hear the voice of a hurricane or an earthquake or a fire, but rather the whisper of the wind. That is where we must listen in the stillness of our hearts. At that point, listen for the call. You are my son or daughter, whom I love. With you, I am well pleased. The question is simple. To whom do I belong? To God or to the world? And the answer is easy. Of course we belong to God. But our actions do not always show this. More often than not, we are fighting for survival in a world that does not love us. People, this world does not love you. It never will. It'll chew you up and spit you out every single time. It does not love you. It wants to use you and abuse you. We struggle with the day-to-day trials and tribulations that attempt to trip us up each and every day. We can't escape it. Our day-to-day struggle is a struggle of survival in this world, not a holy struggle. As long as we continue to run around asking the questions of ourselves, does God love me? Does He really love me? We're giving in to the powers of this world. We succumb to the powers of the ifs in this world. Yes, He loves me if I read the Bible. Yes, He loves me if I show up to church on Sunday morning. Yes, He loves me if I put a little bit of money in the offering plate. Yes, He loves me if we are the prodigal son. Every single time we search for unconditional love where it cannot be found. As we open up the curtain to the parable, we can see much more is taking place than a mere compassionate gesture toward a lost child. The great event we see is the end of the great rebellion. The rebellion of Adam and his descendants. is forgiven. And the original blessing by which Adam received everlasting life is restored. His hands, God's hands, have always been stretched out, even when there were no shoulders upon which to rest. God will never pull back. But the Father could not compel his Son to stay home. He couldn't force his love on his Son. He had to let him go in freedom, even though he knew the pain it would cause both of them. It was love itself that prevented him from keeping his Son home at all costs. It is love itself that allowed his Son to find his own life, even with the risk of losing it. We are loved so much, we are left free to leave home. The blessing is there from the beginning. We have left it, and we keep leaving it. But the Father is always looking for us with outstretched arms to receive us back and whisper again in our ears, "You are my son or daughter, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." The Son returns with nothing to his name. He returns with no money. His health is likely questionable. His honor is gone. His self-respect and his reputation ruined. Everything is squandered. We see him torn down by the world. When the younger son was no longer considered to be a human being, was looked at as a slave, we profoundly looked upon his isolation with the deepest loneliness one can experience. He saw his chosen path clearly before him. He had chosen death. And if he was to continue with one more step down this path, he surely would face death. It is at this moment that he realizes the situation. It is at this moment that he finds the quiet voice in his heart. "Father, I am no longer worthy to be called your son." On the one hand, the younger son realizes that he has lost the dignity of sonship. But at the same time, that sense of lost dignity makes him also aware that he is indeed the son who had dignity to lose. Once he had come into touch with his sonship, he could hear, although it be faintly, the voice calling, the voice telling him, "You are my son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." Let's pray. Almighty God, we give thanks. Give thanks for stories that we're allowed to step into where we clearly see ourselves. Give thanks for the powerful lessons that come with each of them. Today, Lord, we give thanks that the prodigal, sometimes us, is welcomed back home with open arms. That when we return back, we find that the arms were never let down. They were always there, always open, waiting to receive us. Because grace wins. The Father doles grace out time and time and time again. Lord, let our hearts know this. Let our hearts know this truth about you. No matter where we find ourselves in this world, this distant land. That you're there waiting to welcome us back home when we wander too far. With open arms and hands of a mother and a father, comforting us, making it known to us that we are truly loved. Lord, like the prodigal, we don't always understand this and can't comprehend it. But the joy it gives us to know that simple fact that you are there with your arms open, waiting on us, enlivens us. So your people, Lord, we thank you. Thank you for the reminders. Thank you for the love that Jesus showed us. We thank you for that unconditional love that reaches out to each and every single one of us. Pray this in your Holy Son's name. And all God's people say, Amen.